Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Nuff channel. In this video we're going to update our NRL Fantasy squad after the announcement of the Week 2 preseason challenge teams. So I probably haven't given a lot of love to the NRL Fantasy community, but I was having a bit of a look this afternoon as I sort of did my initial reaction and SuperCoach team update. And when I was uploading it, I just saw the last fantasy video I did, which was a while ago, had I think easily the most views out of all the videos on my channel. So apologies to those of you who are fantasy inclined and want a bit more content around that. But I guess speaking of those people watching, just have to do a big shout out. I forgot this in the SuperCoach video too. I was a bit rushed this afternoon. But I've cracked 250 subscribers, which is absolutely massive. So thanks to each and every one of you for getting on board and coming on the journey with me. So speaking of which, we'll put together the updated team, and there's probably been a few sort of structural changes in particular, but also obviously player changes. But I guess the first thing that I have done is I've locked in the two big guns in the halves, Hind and Cleary. Obviously both expensive. You know, you could argue there's a bit of value around Fogarty and maybe Sam Walker if you're that way inclined. Or obviously, you know, a nice couple of cheapies have come up who I'll talk about a bit later. But I guess, you know, just having these guys as captain, vice captain option every week. And I guess also if we throw in Harry Grant as well. So, you know, basically these guys do each have a bye fairly early, but it does allow, you know, captain and vice captain choice each and every week, which is pretty nice. So, you know, happy to sort of build the team around these guys. So then in the middle, I've still got Cam Murray, but I have let go of Payne Haas. I think there's a couple more value options that we can sort of opt for. So the first option, I'm just got to work out how far down they are. Sort of tried to remember all the players, but forgot all the prices. And I say that, I've actually forgotten some of the players. So must be around the 500s where I was looking. There he is, Ruben Cotter. So I think, you know, the added responsibility of the captaincy, plus I guess, you know, the last couple of years he started off really strong, maybe faded out post Origin. You know, he usually puts in a massive effort, playing like 80 minutes for the Queensland every game. You know, Todd Payton's more inclined to play him the 55-60, but, you know, we'll take advantage of that and, you know, sort of keep him till Origin, and then, you know, the Cowboys don't have the best run with things like buys and stuff after Origin starts. So it'll be time to sort of sideways him then. The other player in this sort of price range that we're starting is Adam Elliott. So I guess very similar sort of role, you know, playing big minutes at 13 for the Knights. Was a bit hampered by injuries last year, hence the sort of decreased output. But we're going to back him in for a big one. On the edge, so I guess the start of the madness, which is the Bulldogs. If I can find him, it was about 500, wasn't it? So Josh Curran. So obviously dual position, and probably would start him on the bench most weeks, but I guess one of the players I will load up on the bench sort of will sort of dictate that you know, we'll put Curran in this week to start. So he's named on the bench this week for the Dogs, but imagine he'll get through a fair few minutes in that middle rotation. Although they do have Kurt Mann and Curtis Morin and Sam Hughes all on the bench. So it'll be interesting to see how the minutes work, particularly given that there is also other players named on the extended bench. So probably won't get a full guide into it, but I still think current offers some value at 501k. And then the other second roll that's we're going to start, and we're going a fair way down the list because this one has sort of popped up out of nowhere seemingly. Um, Still going down. That's right, we're in the 200Ks. But Jamin Salmon, so very much in line with our middles. He's lined up to start at 13 this week. If he can hold that spot going into actually round one next week, or the week after, I suppose, that would be massive for us to get, a starting middle at under 300k. And he did look really good in that trial against Melbourne, so I think he might have sort of earned himself another crack at that spot. But obviously, he does have Man Curran on his heels. They all want to play in that lock forward, distributing sort of position. Um, and yeah, so at the moment he's got it, so he's in the team. As far as centres go, uh, trying to cut a couple of corners here. So Ben Travojevic looks like he's going to start the season on that left edge. So at 250k with a second rower in the centres, we've got to take that. And the other player I've currently got also at the 250 price point is James Schiller. So he was pretty impressive apparently in the trial. Is named in centres this week. Um, there is a sort of a bit of competition around spots and a bit of a question mark around where Seb Chris fits in to the picture. But we will have a bit of our contingency plan around that. And then our wing fullback. So I think the first one isn't going to be a shock to many if I can find him. But Ryan Pappenhausen, just that try that he scored against the Dogs in the first trial was enough to sort of show me that I think he's ready to rip. Um, so, at 495k, we're absolutely locking him in. The second pick that I've got is not that low, but Keanu Kinney from the Titans. So with Jaden Campbell missing the first few weeks, Kinney will slide in at fullback. So at 279k for a starting fullback, we'll take that. Obviously, the hope is that he can make enough money so the trade to Campbell when he's back fit isn't too um, costly. And I guess that's the advantage of NRL Fantasy is the players start moving prices after a week. So I think these sort of short-term picks that are going to play a few weeks make some money, and then we can sort of trade them on. I think isn't the most irresponsible way to spend the money. So, and the final pick, I guess we're still going with Blake Taff. A lot of people sort of suggesting that maybe he's not the highest scoring, but at 330k, that price is probably a bit more based on not having got a lot of consistency in games and starting off the bench, that sort of thing in the past. So, I think just sometimes having that confidence in the coach saying, this is your position, make it your own. That could be enough to get a bit of cash out of him. We're not expecting him to be a keeper by any stretch. But I think look at Jermaine Osako last year. Wayne Bennett just told him that it's his spot, and he absolutely crushed it. Whereas at the Broncos, he was constantly in and out and never sort of got to settle into the team. So that's the starting 13. On the bench, the first player I'm going to load up is Api Coruscant. So admittedly on the bye this week, but I guess people very excited about the goal kicking and all that sort of thing. And with the Parramatta team sort of showing that both Lussick and Hands are in the 17, it sort of makes me think that Brad Arthur's a bit of a liar about wanting to play one for 80 minutes. Either that or he doesn't fully trust either of them to play 80 minutes. So I don't know if there's a cheap option at the moment. Brayley's not that cheap in fantasy, and he's probably going to start off the bench. So I was looking to try and get a second keeper type hooker. And with the sort of way the rest of the budget fell into place, I could just afford Appy Coruscant. So we'll absolutely have him in the team. Um, Now, after that's where I start to get a bit hazy. So I'll put in another player that's probably not playing round one, um, but we do want him in the squad. If I can find him. No, it's way lower than that. Down, down, down. Getting closer. Ah, there he is. So Brendan Piacora. So obviously, a bit of a knee injury in that first trial. Is an outside chance of playing in Vegas. But the way I see it is, even if he doesn't play in Vegas, because they have the extra sort of week to come back and recover, I think he'll be cherry ripe for round two. And obviously in fantasy, we don't get quite as many trades as you do on SuperCoach. So I think, when you have an opportunity to sort of bank a player like Piacora at the start, you can absolutely do that. I guess the sort of wrinkle that might make it not so feasible, if I can find him, is also wanting to carry Alex Seyfarth. So carrying three non-playing players in week one is a bit risky. Um, but I guess if the rest of the guys that we're about to name can do a job for us, hopefully that'll be enough to get us by, and then we'll work on it from there. So this might change. I guess it's sort of the feel of where we're at up to this point, but it is definitely subject to change. Um, so after that, we can go a couple of different ways. We'll talk about Kyle Flanagan. I got him in the team. I think just job security. Um, I guess he will be sort of sharing the workload with Ben Hunt. So, he's not going to be a keeper by any stretch, but I think the job security plus potential upside of things like kick meters and, um, the fact that he's working with his dad as the coach, he sort of would know the system that they're trying to run. So I think that'll be a bit of an advantage. Again, not a season long keeper, but more of an enabler at the start of the season. The other half option that I've got on the bench, if I can find him, Drew Hutchinson. So, sort of a similar deal to the likes of Taff and Curran and Salmon. Like, again, I understand Bulldogs heavy. However, he sort of was a bit of a Mr. Fix-It at the Roosters. It looks like he's going to have that number 7 jersey at the Dogs. So, a chance to establish himself. You can easily see him making a couple of 100K, but definitely not setting the world on fire in terms of points and cash generation. But we're perfectly okay with that. And then from there, obviously, we're running out of cash, so we are going super cheap. So, um, Sam Hughes, I think most people are pretty keen on. Again, what's that now? I'm up to 5 Bulldogs. But I think there's just a lot of value in that team, especially if it's sort of as named um, in this week's trial. It looks like it's pretty close to the final 17. I think they might be sort of holding Kiraz back to get fully fit. But aside from that, I can't see too much wrong with it. And then the final two picks, KO Weeks and Ethan Strange. So I think really these two guys are competing for a single spot, if we're being completely honest. Whoever gets the 6, obviously if it's Strange, it'd be pretty handy to plug him in the centre spot. And, we could get out of James Schiller potentially. But I think what this sort of opens up is some options around what happens when Sebastian Kris comes back. So I know this week Albert Hopewadi's been named at fullback. Um, Weeks and Stranger in the halves again. Schiller's named at centre. There's Chevy Stewart still sort of hanging around. Um, So, it could be the case of, well, if they decide to go with Weeks at 6, and, they might play Stewart at fullback for week 1, or that might be Hopewadi. Um, that's fine. We can obviously trade Strange out, or if it's Strange, obviously we can trade Weeks out. Um, and then whichever way this goes, we've got Schiller that can cover Kinney if Weeks is out, or obviously if it's Weeks in, then he's just a straight swap in week 2. So sort of having these guys covers Kinney for week 2 when the Titans are on the bye. Um, but also, whichever one of these guys misses out, they're essentially just a placeholder. Because if we look at the NRL Fantasy sort of, I don't know what you call this roster, it doesn't include all these developmental players that have been named in starting spots. So you've got the likes of Farmasili at the Bulldogs is the starting prop. So, he could actually probably just swap with Sam Hughes if he looks like he's going to get good minutes. I don't think he will. But, they'll just use him as impact on the start, and then he might, play a few minutes at the back end. But, Alec was named at the Titans to replace Fafita while he's injured. That would be another cheap option. Kane Bradley at the Storm named ahead of Sean Bloor. There was a couple others that escaped me. Jacob Gagai from South. Sounds like they're keen to play him over in Vegas round 1. And there was definitely at least one more, but it's escaped me that I had in mind. So, there's definitely options for who we could, substitute for Strange or Weeks, or, whichever one misses out in that Canberra backline. So, for now they're just a placeholder. Maybe in an ideal world, Weeks might sort of somehow slide into fullback for a week, or, Strange could play in the centres alongside, well, maybe not Schiller in that case, it'd probably Timoko. Um, yeah, but realistically, not all three are going to make it. But they're just sort of in that position. But I guess that's how the team is sort of shaping up after those announcements. As I said, it probably won't matter too much until actual week 1 kicks off. But I guess obviously the strengths are things like, I think the middles are a lot better. There's going to be a lot more points scored through the middles. Um, these sort of nice options like Salmon and Travojevic have popped up, so we'll absolutely take advantage of that. Obviously, downsides of having 3 non-playing players in week 1 means that it's basically going to be all these hands on deck. So Hutchinson, Flanagan, Weeks, or sorry, Hughes, and then whichever of the Raiders guys play, they'll be the starting 17. Although if we can get someone like a Bradley or an Alec in there, we might start them over these guys just for that work rate. Um, and then, yeah, but, we can always get out of Piacora if we need to as a way out. But, yeah, I guess also just having the Cleary and Hines combo is something we don't need to stress about. So throw the captaincy on Hines for week 1. It won't let me do it. What's going on? So captain, vice captain. So that's nice and easy to begin with. But yeah, I'll fix up the bench, I suppose. I should just do straight swaps. Should I? Swap. Alright, and then swap, something like that. Obviously, with 3 non-players, you can always use the loophole and that sort of thing. So I guess set that up like that. So yeah, so you can run with something like that quite easily. And yeah, so I guess that's the team and how it's looking. Obviously, we've still got a whole week of trials to go, and then I guess over the 2 weeks, the sort of round 1 will roll out. So it'll be interesting to sort of see, based on the teams named for Vegas, how we sort of go about picking the team. So, like, obviously Cam Murray will be locked in. Piakora, what do we do with him if he's playing, not playing? Travojevic will be locked in. But then after that, we've got lots of flexibility around the rest of the squad. So I guess we don't want to overcommit on like picking Piakora and then all of a sudden all the cheapies disappear before the rest of the round finishes. But don't think that will happen. But you can never be too careful. So I think that's about it for this video. As I said, if you want a bit of more of a reaction to the week 2 list, I did have the SuperCoach video where I did that as part of all that. So feel free to check that out. But obviously, if you want to make a comment or a thought or a question about the NRL fantasy stuff, feel free to pop it down below this video. Obviously, if you enjoy the NRL fantasy stuff, remember to give it a like. As I said, I was very shocked about the number of views that were there. So obviously, people are loving the NRL fantasy. Subscribe. We've still got all the NRL content. We've got AFL stuff. We've still got EPL going. So get on board with all that. And other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.